let's see. It's just a couple minutes after 11:30, so we can go ahead and get started. Just as a thank you to everyone who is attending, and a special thank you to Kenny for being our kickoff presentation for the base camps this semester. Just to let you know, this one is being recorded. We'll edit out everything up until now, basically. But to let you know, it is going to be recorded and will be live on or presented on our website. So to let you know, this is a forward-facing video. So if you need to adjust anything, to give you a heads up there. And as let's see, it looks like maybe Sam is joining us as well, and we'll let her get settled in. And then at the end of the presentation, Kenny, I just need about 30 seconds, and I'll share a quick survey as well as a link to our upcoming base camps after this one. So we hope to see you all throughout the semester for our conversations about teaching and technology and general joy and happiness. So Kenny, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It's good to see Phil. Phil and I basically follow each other and like whatever we're posting on Twitter. So I really appreciate Phil's being here. I do want to go ahead and talk. It takes a lot of hubris. It takes a lot of hubris to talk to a bunch of educators about how to educate. And I've got to say this. I'm not the best at this. I've got a feeling that there are probably people in this room that are far better. So I'm basically what I'm going to be offering you is just some stuff that I've been thinking about, and really that's all I'm able to do anyway. So I'll be happy to share whatever resources that I've got. I do want to go ahead and share with you the presentation that I put together, but let me preface it by saying this. This isn't my presentation. This is very much yours. Stop me if there's something that you want to insert. I promise you, most of you are smarter than I am, and that's fine with me. I've told my students over and over again, I teach public speaking, but one of the things that I recognize about public speaking is really a conversation. And that's what most good communication is. It's a conversation. And the more that we make it formal and people having to basically obey mechanics, the less I get out of it, quite honestly. And I think the less most people do. I just thought this was quite possibly one of the most clever titles I've ever come up with, because zooming past coronavirus. I hope you all appreciated that I used Zoom, the tool. Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you very much. So I want to start off by talking about this, and it's kind of a way of introducing my idea behind pedagogy. This little girl is my daughter Abby. She's my youngest. She's going to kill us all, but this is Abby, and we're at Busch Gardens, and this is the same year that my wife went to Hobby Lobby, and she found the lemonade stand on clearance, that stupid cardboard lemonade stand, and my little daughter Abby, basically badgered me for most of July and a good portion of August to put that stupid lemonade stand together. And my wife and I kind of put that off as much as we could. And let's be very honest about this. It's me, because I realized what happens with my daughter is she has this grand design about having a lemonade stand. And what she's going to do with that lemonade stand is she's going to get rich quick. And she already has grand designs for all the money, all the amazing amounts of money she's going to make. She doesn't know how to make lemonade. She doesn't know how to do anything that goes along with it. She doesn't understand the concept of a cash box. She doesn't understand anything that goes into a lemonade stand. She does not recognize that in this neighborhood, we don't even know the names of our neighbors, much less would they buy lemonade? I don't know. So, I mean, here's the thing. I work in the College of Business. This girl has done no business research whatsoever. So we made the lemonade stand. She was very persuasive. And as somebody who teaches communication, I got to hand it to her. I mean, what she did was she just badgered me until we did it. She was very, very persuasive. My wife made the lemonade. I tried to figure out a cash box. We found some cups. We put it in the front of the house, and I just sat there thinking, this is going to last about 20 minutes. She's going to get really upset that nobody's stopping. She's going to be really upset that she's going to get really upset that her grand plans are gone for naught. Except, this is what happened. My daughter ended up basically staying out there for about 90 minutes and walked away with just shy of $30. I guess that goes to show you that an academic doesn't really know that much when it comes right down to it. You see, what I had underestimated was the power of a cute little girl sitting behind a lemonade stand and people that were interested in not buying lemonade, but helping my daughter. They were interested in making my daughter feel good about her efforts. And that taught me a really powerful lesson. I want to start off here because I think one of the things that you all need to know is probably my educational philosophy. And it's related to that story of my daughter. The only reason I was making a lemonade stand was because this was my daughter and I loved her. And the only reason I didn't want to do the lemonade stand, I didn't want my daughter to feel lousy about the experience. Two things. I was too lazy to do it because it was the summer. And I didn't want my daughter to feel lousy about the experience because I knew what business failure feels like. In my view of education and pedagogy, I believe education is primarily relational. And what I mean by that, Samantha, you're exactly right. What I mean by that is I think one of the things about pedagogy or being professors or being teachers, the facts and processes that you teach now may or may not be relevant or even true 20 years from now. Let's face it. The facts and processes I teach today, I'm not even sure will be remembered today. The fact is that the students, if I'm doing my job correctly, will remember how to think, not necessarily what to think. And I don't really think it's my job to teach them what to think. I think it's how to do that. The students will also remember very clearly how they felt. And I think that's an important thing to remember. The fact is, they will probably not remember most. I could ask you guys, what percentage of the information that you learned in your undergraduate university experience do you think you retain? Go ahead, unmute yourself. Say numbers. Gallo, what's your number?
100.
Gallo, you are amazing. But of course, I always knew that.
Thank you.
He took my answer.
Well, then maybe I'm just a terrible student because I don't think I remember very much at all. But I've had to pick up a lot going through basically how to teach. And I guess, go ahead.
You ask how much you remember or how much
how much you retain, Gallo?
How much we forgot?
How much you forgot? My dad is also a physician, and one of the things that they told him was while he was in med school was they said about 60% of what we're teaching you is inaccurate, but we don't know what 60% that is. So we're going to teach you what we think we know right now. And I think that was actually probably pretty good advice, because I mean my dad was in med school in the 70s, and you tell me, well, Gallo, you know this better than I do. How much has changed in medicine? Anything?
It changed a lot because I was in medical school in the 70s too. So it has changed a lot. Doctors in the past, they were more kind of prepared to treat diseases.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Not really to treat people. That was one of the biggest deals at that time.
Boy,
It has changed.
yes. And I think the second part of that is the part that I'm probably most interested in. You went from treating illnesses to treating people, and there's a big difference between those two things. How do you produce a relationship with your students which connects them and adapt them to changing contexts? And I think that's really what happened with coronavirus. I think one of the things that happened to us is we basically were introduced to a set of tools that we had to learn very hurriedly, very quickly. And then remember, my educational philosophy says that education is primarily relational. And now we're given Zoom. And I want to talk about 3 tools, and I'm only going to talk about them very briefly. I want to talk about Zoom. I want to talk about Google Docs and Microsoft Word, and I'm going to do a little comparison there. And then I want to talk about Microsoft Teams, because I use these very specifically. And then I have an exercise, as every good instructor does. I have an exercise for you guys to do, and I can tell Carrie's already excited about this. So. Thank you, Carrie. I knew I could count on you. Zoom became that tool and that platform that we all love to hate. Anybody have any great stories about something that just really went poorly on Zoom? Go ahead, Melissa. I can tell you have something to say.
No, you know, I'm a bit of a idealist and a cheerleader for things, so I'm not the best with bad stories.
I think one of the things that happened to me when I was teaching with Zoom is that I missed what I had, and it was hard to make something work when I knew that things could be better, and it wasn't better, and it wasn't going to get better. And I think one of the things that I learned was I really miss seeing faces, because in this Zoom environment, I think the tool of Zoom itself is actually really good for larger groups. And I think the technology is good for larger groups. I think it's actually a really nice tool to use, especially while people are dispersed. And I'm going to talk about this just a little bit later, because when we start migrating back, I hope we're able to head back to the classroom where we actually see people in the flesh, and I think there's some really powerful uses of this tool that will allow us to stay connected while we're dispersed. And I think that the beauty of Zoom is it makes possible things that were not possible before. And I think there are things that, and I've got a faith-based podcast, and one of the things that I've said over and over again is I don't think these times are given to us to not learn things that are possible. I think it's about time we start figuring out what we can do now that everybody is trained on tools, forcibly trained on these tools. So anyway, I use breakout groups a lot, and I love breakout groups. I still do love breakout groups. And the beauty of breakout groups is it allowed me to drop in and keep an eye on my students. It also allowed me, and this is something that I completely stole from Jennifer Toole. And by the way, Jennifer Toole, for those of you who know her, for those of you who don't know her, go introduce yourself. I don't know what you've been waiting for. Jennifer Toole is one of the most gifted educators I know who teach. She teaches in my department. She teaches what was multimedia, now it's digital communication. But one of the things that she talked about, and she convinced me, was in these breakout rooms, have them work on a document together at the same time. And there's something beautiful about this that I'll be able to show you in just a second. And really that idea of the chat, that in the chat, I'm able to drop links in and make things available to my students. And that's actually pretty cool. But Zoom actually ended up being a solution with a problem. And my guess is you could probably guess what that problem was. It was real time, and it was a relational preserver, but the interaction and engagement was sometimes just an illusion. And you all got the illusion. I mean, think about this. I have a lot of students without faces now. My guess is you do too. I've got a lot of students without voices now. Because once they turn off the video and once they mute their microphone, and we're begging them to turn on the video and begging them to keep their microphones muted, now we have a population where we hope they're engaged. We hope we've got their attention. I don't know that we always do. And one of the things that I try to basically keep my students off balance is I will absolutely call on somebody like Renee and say, Renee, what do you think about this? Renee, have you had something like this happen to you before? Well, Renee, have you had something like this happen to you before?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And obviously I'm guilty of it as we speak.
And that's fine. Let me ask you this, and I'm going to pick on you just a little bit more. Do you feel put upon right now?
Yes and no.
Okay.
It's one of those things like I'm attending a lesson, I'm in class, so I should expect something like this.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, yeah, it's hard. In many ways, as a student, I love to hide in the back. Maybe the professor won't call on me.
Yeah.
In this environment, it's kind of easier to be hidden.
I'm having a conversation with a guy who's probably one of the best public speakers that I know, but he's an introvert. He is a heavy introvert. And what you're describing there is the introvert's dilemma, which is, I'm not judging anybody else here. Renee, you very well could be the smartest person in the room, but you're not going to say much. And really, one of the things that I think is incumbent upon the professor, the teacher, or whoever, is to check in with Renee every once in a while and see what's going on. To check in with your classroom, Renee. I want to go back to that first slide, Renee. Who do you mind talking to, and who do you not mind talking to? Maybe that's a read my mind question.
It's tough because in many ways, it is kind of comforting to not see faces because it's tough talking to people where you can obviously see they're not paying attention.
Yeah.
Either in person or virtually. I mean, it's tough. So
Yeah.
without their faces, kind of ignorance is bliss.
I understand that. The question I was asking was probably a read my mind question. Do you mind if somebody you like calls you out? Or go ahead.
I guess personally, I wouldn't mind that at all. I enjoy it because it's nice to have a connection with somebody.
Yeah. If you don't like the teacher, if you don't like the presenter, do you feel put upon when they call on you?
I think personally, I think it depends on what the question is.
Yeah.
If it's something I'm confident, then no big deal. Well, it's not as big of a deal. But if it's something I'm not comfortable with, then it's tough.
That makes perfect sense to me. The first point that I made was that education is primarily relational. And I think one of the most important things that you can do for students who do not like to turn on their microphones, turn on their cameras, this is a safe place. This is some place where you can be heard, that you can be wrong, where it's okay not to know the answer. Because Renee, when you don't know the answer, I'm going to ask Samantha to help you. And Samantha is going to be more than happy to help you because Samantha likes you too. The people who have, and this is something that I learned a long time ago, and I guess we all learned this, which is the only people who have the right to criticize is the people who love me. The people who do not have the right to criticize me are the people who hate me. My mom can rip me up one side and down the other. But that guy that I don't get along with, I'm watching his commas. I'm trying to see exactly, is he absolutely 100% accurate or is he not? And I think I think education is primarily relational. that when you create an atmosphere where it's okay not to know something, where it's okay to be wrong, where it's okay and feel supported in this environment, I think that's pretty powerful. So anyway, I go back to my educational philosophy. And ultimately, I think one of the things that happens with Zoom is it's harder. My dissertation was about online versus face-to-face relationships. And one of the things that we learned about online versus face-to-face relationships, friendships do happen in just online environments, but it's harder and it takes longer. And what happened with Zoom is, for me and my students, especially for the students that didn't know me, that took a long time. And really what I had to start doing was I had to start relying on the people who did know me. Okay, guys, the midterm. I've explained the midterm, but you guys know my midterms. Those of you who've had me before, what are my midterms really like? They can explain it better than I can. Why? I don't take my midterms. I write them. They know. And by the way, if you really want to find out what they are, ask them when I'm not here, because they can tell you what the midterm is really like. What's it like to take an Embry midterm? And really, it's that idea of basically creating an environment where we're creating a culture where it's okay to ask questions. I want to do a little, the second tool that I want to talk about, and we're going to come back to these tools in just a second, but Zoom is quite possibly the one that we use the most, was the tool that we use the most. But Google Docs and Microsoft Word have similar functionality, but one of the things I'm going to make an argument for is I want to make an argument for one of these. So one of the things that I want you to do, and let me go ahead and open up the chat. And let me pull up this thing. Okay. How many of you have used Google Docs before? Yes? Okay. How many of you have never used Google Docs? Anybody? What's your impression of Google Docs versus Microsoft Word?
Actually, it's pretty good. I use it. Google Docs. I have students who, the problem was they used to send me those Google Docs papers. Yeah. When you try to open them, surprise, you cannot open with your computer. You had to go into Google Docs to open it up.
Yeah.
But other than that, I really think it works pretty well.
Okay. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a little experiment with you. I put in 2 links here. I want you to start with the second link. And I'll go ahead and show you. This is a doc that I've called, it's called Test Document. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here so you can see it. And what I want you guys to do is click on that link, which should open up that Word document for you. And I want you to start typing in it. All right, are you in there?
I cannot see it, and also I'm on my phone because my internet.
That's fine.
Something is going on my home. They're just fixing something outside, so I'm just on my phone, so I cannot see it. Sorry.
Yeah, then that's fine. That's fine. All right, I see that there are a few of you in here. Hello, test. All right, I'm sorry. I was trying to share this as well. There it is. Okay, you can see. All right, how many of you have actually typed something in there now? Okay. Oh, wow, and now a few more are coming in? Okay. Samantha, have you typed something in there yet?
No, I've got my phone on because the internet was being weird.
No,
so
that's fine. That's fine. Somebody's waving? Okay. Tell me, how long is it taking to show up on the screen? How long is it taking?
There's a significant lag, both in what you're showing and what I'm seeing on my personal machine.
Okay. Now what I want you to do is
which Microsoft account?
What'd you say?
It's trying to find my Microsoft account.
Okay. Now I want you to click on the other one. I want you to click on the Google Doc. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and share this screen. All right. Okay. And let's see here. Oh my goodness. Anonymous Pumpkin is doing something very interesting there. And Anonymous Llama. And okay, talk to me about the differences between those two. Greg, what's the difference between Microsoft and the Microsoft Word and the Google Doc?
Obviously, the lag is less, and it's showing people's names, which usually with Microsoft, it shows your initials, not necessarily your full name.
Right. And by the way, it's not really showing your names on Google Docs. It's actually anonymized to all of you. All of you are, I mean, Anonymous Llama, Anonymous Pumpkin, things like that. By the way, one of the things that I like about this is if somebody doesn't want to identify themselves, they don't have to. But I do get a sense of who's contributing and who's not. Maybe not the individuals contributing, but how many people are contributing. And what you'll also notice here is there is a significant lag with Microsoft. I mean, I've run this experiment probably a dozen times. It never varies. When you look at Microsoft, for some reason, has extremely powerful software that is just slower. Google software is much less powerful, but just faster. And I think for things that I'm going to talk about in the classroom, Phil, are you tried this, Philip?
Ah, there you go. Yes, sir. I tried. I could. It was asking me to sign in. So.
Oh my goodness. Oh, it's asking you to sign in on Google?
Yes, sir.
Oh my goodness. It's never had that do that for me. But I mean, is anybody else having a similar problem that he's having?
Looks like they're just typing away.
Let's see here. Somebody else says, I find Google cross-platform friendly. Yeah, Samantha, me too. I think it's very, very, but by the way, I mean, I'm an Android guy through and through. And I think on the iPhone, the best apps you can get are the Google ones. So I think it actually makes a lot of sense. And it's something that works on phones. But I mean, Microsoft does too. I'm not, that's exactly right, Samantha. I'm reading your lips right there. Yeah, it works on the phone. It works on every computer that you have. Now, there are downsides to this. This is far less secure than what Microsoft has. As long as you don't mind other people being able to hack into this. And by the way, if somebody hacked into this, they'd see hello, everyone. They would see, that's fine with me. I don't care. But do you see how you can basically make a document and have them make a document in real time, have them make a PowerPoint in real time, have them make, and get them to share this. And I'm going to talk about this in just a second. Let me go back to my PowerPoint. Again, my PowerPoint. Let's see here. Whoops. Which is a Microsoft tool. Now let's see here. So I will say this. I intentionally use Google for most of my in-class projects for exactly the reason I just illustrated. It's faster. With the exception of Phil, most students don't have any problem getting into the documents. And if you'd like to learn how to do what I did, the permissions are actually really simple. Everybody has, I want to say, 10 gigabytes of storage at the outset. I pay $100 a year for two terabytes. Worth it for me because I use it for a lot of things. But the other thing that I use a lot is I use Microsoft Teams. Anybody in here use Teams with any regularity? Melissa, Karen, raise your hand. Daniel, raise your hand as well. Candace, yeah. Carrie, I know you do. Greg, I know you do too. Samantha, do you? Okay. Phil, do you, Phil?
Yes, sir. I use it a lot, especially with
Okay.
learning design.
Okay. Then I'm probably not telling you guys anything. One of the things that I will say about Teams is it's probably for what I use it for, it's too much. It has way more functionality than I actually want it to have. And the way I use it is mostly for chats. And I use it basically to talk to people. For me, if it's like 2 to 4 people, maybe even 5, I might use Microsoft Teams instead of Zoom. And the reason for that is pretty simple. It has a persistent chat history. Your Microsoft, I'm sorry, your Zoom chat vanishes with the video. It's gone. But if I decide, I'm gonna ping Daniel and ask him a question that he can pick up later, it will stay there, and I like that. The other thing that I love about Teams is that it's not email. It took somebody a little bit of doing to figure out how to communicate with me on Teams. If they went that extra couple of steps, it's probably somebody I actually want to talk to. And that to me is really useful. The other thing that I would say about Teams is it also has that voice and video option. If I start figuring out, we keep on texting here, let's just cut this out. Let's just go ahead and do a video chat. There's the button. You just go ahead and do a video chat right now, and then you're done. I think one of the things that happens, and we've all been in this situation, where it's okay, you asked a question in email and somebody answered it, and now you have to answer it because the answer they gave you was not exactly what you're looking for, and then they answer your answer, and then before you know it, you got a chain of 10 or 15 emails that should have been a 2 to 3 minute conversation. And this transitions very nicely to, okay, let's just cut this out. Let's just have a conversation. It also has a lot of flexibility, too much flexibility, in my opinion. And go ahead, Gallo.
Sorry about that. My dog wanted to go out. Sorry.
Well, as long as you're doing that, Gallo, would you take my dog out too? It's been a while. So,
what's his name?
Coco, little Coco, yeah, little black dog Coco barks every time the UPS comes to the door. So yeah, okay, okay. The other thing is it's easy to share things, and it really is, in my opinion, a better relational tool. It allows me to chat. It allows me to share files. It allows me to share stuff, and I think it's not like email couldn't do these things. But this basically does all the triage for me, for my email for me. In other words, the stuff that I'm getting through here is probably the stuff that I want to see, that I need to see. The other thing that I can see is, are they available? Are they busy? And by the way, I know that they're busy, and I'm going to send them a message anyway. And in the message, I can say something along the lines of, I know you're in a meeting right now, but when you get a chance, because I do, it tells me what the status, their status. The other thing that I like, and most people don't know what this up here is, where I've got that circle to the right of the telephone, that's sharing your screen. That's how you share your screen. Most people get confused with that. And then you can do all the cool things. You can share a file in chat. You can put up a GIF, because we've learned how important those are. You can do all kinds of things just in the chat. That's really powerful. So one of the things that I love to do is in Zoom and in Teams, I might have them do a group project. And really kind of what I'm envisioning for when we go back to face-to-face. You guys know as well as I do, the great struggle with group projects is having the groups find a time that they can all meet together. because they're trying to coordinate their time. And the easiest way for them to actually find a time where they can all basically meet together is your class time. But one of the things that I know is during class time, that's also when they probably need the guidance from me the most. What a beautiful thing to basically send my students out of the classroom to go talk about what they need to get done, and then come out of their breakout room and say, Dr. Embry, we got a question. Because I got to tell you, I mean, one of the things that's happened to me that has been really powerful this year, my classrooms are not full anymore, but I'll have 3 groups that are working at the same time. And what I'll say is, okay, go outside, go in the hall, go someplace else where you're not bothering the other group, and come back to the main room when you have a question, and I'll answer it for you. The other thing I'll do is I'll just bop into one of the rooms and I'll say, okay, guys, what's going on? That's actually a really nice use, in my opinion, a great use of Zoom. That you can check in with your students, but also give them the time. And it's really that idea of the flipped classroom that we've talked about for years now. Allow them the opportunity to go out and do the project while you're there and while you can help them. And then just start trying to figure out what their project is going to be. I like, okay, and this is basically supporting that point, which is let's meet outside. Occasionally what I'll do is I'll take my students, I used to take my students outside, mostly just to get a change of scenery, sometimes because the building was just unworldly cold. And I just want to see the sunshine a little bit. And I'd take them outside. The beauty of this is, especially like at the coffee shop, it's at Benedict's, they've got pretty decent Wi-Fi there. And Jen and I did this with the class we were co-teaching. Set up a computer, sat and drank coffee, and told the students to go someplace. And that's where we would be. And if they needed to come see us, come into the lobby or come to the coffee house. That was actually kind of fun. The other thing that I know that happens, especially in Zoom, is that back channel conversation. In other words, you know as well as I do that they're talking about something in the chat, in the private chats. And one of the things that I recognize is they are absolutely talking about the Super Bowl. They're talking about everything that is not your class. But the other thing that they're doing, and I know this happens too, is, did he say the test is on Wednesday? I didn't understand that last thing he just said. Does anybody else understand that thing he just said? In other words, they're starting to lean on each other to learn my material. That's kind of cool. That they can now start using each other as a resource to learn the material that I'm trying to teach them. And really, go back to my educational philosophy. I'm trying to teach them how to learn. That is the most important thing that I do. Because most of the facts that I teach them won't be facts anymore in 20 years. So this, I think, is really important. And I think if we try to cut it off too much, I think we're going to kill something that's actually pretty valuable. That back channel chat. And one of the things I do, especially with teams, and I can show you guys this because I do it 100 times, which is, all right, Jarrett's one of my students. Did you understand what was going on today? Did it make any sense? Because I don't know if it made any sense to me. And if it didn't make any sense to me, I don't know if it made any sense to you and your group. Don't do that during class. Do that after class. Make sure that you're checking in with them to make sure that the group project is actually going to plan, that they're not having problems. And then, again, I say it 1,000 times, which is, okay, what can I do to help you guys? How can I make this go better? And that idea of the collaborative document. When I put them in breakout rooms, one of the things that I do is I will put up 4 Google Docs. And I say, okay, guys, copy these down. And then group 1 is in Google Doc 1, group 2 is in Google Doc 2, and group 3 is in Google Doc 3. And then what I do is I watch the Google Docs. And I just see who's contributing and who's doing what. And if I see there are a lot of people not writing something on the Google Doc, I might check in. What are you guys doing? What are you guys talking about? And it's actually kind of a neat thing. About 75% of the time, they're talking about what they're going to be doing this Friday or this weekend. But about 25% of the time, it's I don't know that I understand this assignment. And then that becomes a real opportunity for me to, I don't know, make something clearer. Okay. Let me ask you guys, what would you do? Given the tools that I've talked about, can you think of an assignment, an exercise that might use Zoom or Teams or Google Docs in an unusual way to help basically gauge their learning? In a group, in a breakout room. Isn't this exciting? Isn't this exciting? In a breakout room, what I want you to do is I want you to come up with an exercise that your students could do. I'm going to give you 7 minutes. I'm going to give you 7. Right now, this means I'm going to take you up to 12:20. I'm going to put you in a breakout room. And, oh my goodness. Now I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to make the Google Docs available. I thought I would. I changed my mind. That is the professor's prerogative. It is the professor's prerogative to change their mind. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and put you guys in breakout rooms. Let's see here. I'm going to give you 7 minutes. Oh, I can't put them in breakout rooms. What am I thinking? I don't have co-host privileges. Well, then
Yeah, that was awesome.
What'd you say?
You do have co-host options.
I can pause it. I've got participant. It's not showing me any breakout room option.
Was that not turned on for the meeting?
I don't know. Well, I'll tell you
May
what.
not have been.
I tell you what. Let me just ask you then, and let's just make this a conversation. What kind of things can you guys think of that might actually work in your classroom with some of the tools that I've just talked about?
I can share an experience that I've had.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Sure. So I pretty much converted all of my notes and assignment details and instructions into Google Docs. And then part of the preparation for the class was that I shared it with the students, made it where they could comment. And before we talked about the essay assignment that was coming up, they had to go in and highlight areas that they didn't understand or underline key points and then engage in a conversation through the comments and try to help each other out and talk about what was important about the document. That way, as we prepared to discuss the assignment, they had already read over everything and they could see each other's feedback. It was great. It was a great activity.
Yeah, I love that. That's cool. The collaborative use of Google Docs. Yeah, it's so much easier to collaborate. It's faster. It's just faster. Anybody else?
That's
Go
great.
ahead, Samantha. Go ahead. What'd you say, Daniel?
I was just saying it's great for collaborative note taking too. You know, everybody meshes their ideas together. You can go back and organize things that fit together or get clarification if you had something that is different on a specific topic than your peer had. I mean, there's some great things you can do with note taking.
Yeah, I agree. What Jennifer does, Jennifer Toole, she has all of her classes basically, instead of take notes, they put together a presentation and they're supposed to create the presentation in real time. And basically what she'll do is she'll watch them put the presentation together. And the Google version of PowerPoint is called Slides. And I've seen her do it. Jennifer is far more skilled at that than I am. So, and basically she's got a lot of graphic artists in her class. So they're better at this than I am. I'm happy to get them to use Google Docs. So Anthony, you were going to say something?
No, just agreeing, enjoying.
Okay, good. Phil has a face now, man.
Yeah, I just want to say, Kenny, I just like Zoom itself, from the centers. I know university campus didn't do a lot, but from the centers, we did a lot with VTT, which is the same thing. So
oh, yeah.
With the ability to use Zoom, which works a lot better, You can travel with Zoom. I've been able to do things that I thought I'd never be able to do. So now I hadn't had to miss a class, or professors don't have to miss classes because they're on Zoom. I said, just take the class you can't make it, turn it over to Zoom and teach it from the house instead of coming in, when you're doing the A and B to different sections. So I think Zoom has given us more options to keep our students engaged. Now, I heard you talking earlier about not having the camera on, having the placeholders up, etc. If the students really have an interest in what you're talking about, they will turn the camera on. So like me, when I'm lecturing, a lot of times I tell them to shut the camera down, so we can go through, and then we'll bring the camera back up when we go into the group discussion area itself so I can see the students. It makes it easier when you can see their eyes and see whether or not they're engaged. Yeah. And I love it. I'm just thankful that CTLE has put on things like this. I've worked a lot with Melissa and learned a whole lot of things that we could do to make not only teaching more fun, but make learning more exciting to our students as we continue to go through this process.
I would think, especially Phil, for distance learners and really non-traditional learners, the ability to take VTT with you. I had a meeting on Tuesday with some colleagues for a virtual conference that we're putting on. And one of the things that happened to me was I found out right before that meeting that my son threw up in school. And so all of a sudden I had a trip that I had to take to go pick him up at school. And I didn't have to call off that meeting because it was a meeting where I was the central point in it. And so what I did was I put the phone on the car seat, did not stare at the phone, put it through my Bluetooth, and just talked. That was powerful. And Phil, I think one of the things you're talking about there, Robin Parker and I tried to do something with VTT. Boy, that technology is old, and it sure is not very useful. It's hard to use. Maybe that's a better word to say. Zoom has refined that 1,000-fold. Did you have a lot of pain points with VTT?
I did. It goes out a lot. There was dead areas. If you was going from Atlanta to Virginia, a lot of times it cuts out. But I have not experienced that with Zoom. Zoom has been readily available and operating pretty efficient for me. And, just like now, my wife's a first grade teacher. And it's just crazy for me to watch her sit downstairs and teach first graders on Zoom. This is crazy. And to be honest, I don't know if they're learning or not, but they seem to be having a good time down there.
When you get back to Tampa, you and I need to go get some coffee. My wife is a kindergarten teacher. Exactly the same experience. Exactly the same experience. Yeah. Yeah. I know exactly what I'm grateful for the tools. I'm a tool hound. I love technology, but I also understand sometimes I'll say this, and this was one of the last things I was going to put up here. And I'll go ahead and show you guys. Not that I don't think any of you guys don't already know this. Here, I think tools should connect people, and that when tools create relationships, they're very useful. But I'm somebody who, and my wife busts me on this all the time. When you use relationships to use tools, the tools are just distractions. And I think, Phil, exactly what you're talking about there is that these tools facilitate relationships. To the extent that they do that well, they're good tools. I think what I was worried about, and what I still worry about, is sometimes the tools are not as good as that face-to-face experience. But I am so grateful to have a job. I am so grateful to be able to educate my students. I am so grateful that these tools exist that allow my students to get an education and for me to keep a job. And that's really kind of cool to me. Again, the students will likely not remember the tools. They won't remember Zoom. They won't remember Microsoft Teams because the tools change. But one of the things that they will absolutely remember is that time Phil did that one thing in class that really made an impact on them. They won't remember exactly how he did it, but they will remember Phil, and they'll be like, he did this really cool thing. That's what you want your students to walk away with. Again, my philosophy is education is primarily relational. And these tools, as long as you're facilitating relationships, can do this job pretty well. Okay, that's all I got, guys. I sure hope I sounded smart. So let's see here. I'm trying to stop sharing. Okay. Any questions? Any comments? And by the way, Phil, go ahead.
I've got one. I would pick your brain here. So in a perfect world, what would Zoom do to improve itself to meet your needs as an instructor?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of functionality that I really like in Microsoft Teams, and I'm not, one of the tools that I use a lot is Microsoft OneNote, but I have exactly the same problems with Microsoft OneNote that I have with Microsoft Word and all these other, that the lag is just significant and frustrating. I have the same problem with I want Teams to be beefed up, and I want Microsoft Teams to be scaled back. Because I think one of the things about Microsoft Teams is you can integrate OneNote into Microsoft Teams, and you can also integrate Slack, and you can also integrate, and it's like, oh man, there's too much here. And all of a sudden Teams becomes really noisy, and there's much less signal than noise. And I just know that, and Teams becomes distracting. I love the unitask that Zoom does so well, because it's just there for you to facilitate a meeting. But there are like 2 or 3 things that I wanted to do. I want to be able to make a persistent conversation, and it doesn't. And I want it to share files well, but it doesn't. So I mean, I'm thankful that we have both tools, because I think both tools complement each other very nicely. And I think the other thing is, I am not an advocate for most email, because I think what happens with email is it's that fire hose that becomes the thing you have to triage. Yesterday, I got 32 emails, and most of them had a to-do item. And let me go ahead and tell you, I saved that until the last thing in the day, because I don't want my day to be hijacked by somebody else's to-do list. So I will find out what they want me to do at the end of the day, so I can get the stuff done that I need to get done. Because I already had a list. So email is that everybody's got my email address and everybody uses it. I don't know. Do you guys get a lot of email, or am I the only one? Renee doesn't. Apparently Renee doesn't.
You're not alone.
Renee, were you saying you get no email, huh?
Oh, no, I wish. I hate opening up the email at times.
I hate it. And on top of that, there's always that one student like, hey, did you get my email? When did you send it? Oh, about 30 minutes ago. Did you get it? And I'm like, I'm sorry. Did you think I live on my email? I definitely try not to. So yeah, I get it. Anybody else?
After they rolled Teams out in Microsoft, I remember going to one of their conferences, and one of the people that were pretty high up, that had over 100 employees under her, she told her team they weren't allowed to email her anymore. Everything had to go through Teams. And she said, if it comes from y'all, I'm going to ignore it. So, she was basically forcing her team to start to use Teams instead of using email, because, she'd have 500 emails in one day. And so, not to go to that extreme. I mean, that's kind of the extreme side, but it was just interesting. I remember listening to him talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing about it is, I mean, this morning I talked to Daniel and Karen. Basically, I needed some warm bodies to do something, to help me with something. I was not about to email them. I used Teams. Why? Because I could tell whether they were up or not. I could tell if they were busy or not. And I knew that they would answer me on Teams. I knew that my email would probably get lost. Samantha, what were you going to say?
Oh, I just feel like there's too many places, definitely too many places on Teams where things get put. It's like one of those old-fashioned card catalogs. Is it in this drawer? No. Is it in this drawer? No.
All right. You're speaking Renee's language now. So, I mean.
I understand it all too well.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. That's the other thing. The problem is there are 1,000 great tools that help us do something. But the problem is there's 1,000 of them.
Yes.
And your dean is going to be interested in these 10, and then your department is going to be interested in a different 10. And it's like, okay, tell me just exactly how many tools do y'all need me to use? So yeah, I get it. I like Teams because it's a university standard. I am not wild about Microsoft, but I'm not wild about any of them right now. But Google is too limited in what it does. It's just not very powerful. It's just really good at collaboration, and so that's what I'll use it for. And my students are already using it. They know how to use it. I heard one faculty member who said, well, what if the students don't have a Gmail address? And so I've gone into every class. Okay, how many of y'all don't have a Gmail address? Not a single hand goes up. They all have Gmail addresses. Every single one of them. What are you saying, Samantha?
Probably multiple.
Maybe. Maybe.
You know, for the dating apps, they've got to have one for Tinder.
Look, I'm not touching that. I'm not touching that. Don't want to know anything about it. So anyway. Okay. Anything else? I don't know how to pronounce. Is it Harsha? You have been silent the entire time.
Well, I'm sorry. I have a very loud household. You can.
No.
Right,
That's fine.
My husband is in the call right now. So yeah, that's why I've been muted. I'm really sorry about that.
No. Don't be sorry. Look, I think one of the wonderful things about it. I mean, I have seen how Candace decorates her house. That is kind of cool. And I've never seen anything that's going on in Daniel's house because he always has that fake background up. Yeah. But
I'm
anyway.
hiding a mess. I have 2 under 5, so it's just imagine an explosion of all of the things. There you go.
It's like a bar at closing time. Somebody's crying in the corner.
It's sloppy. I'm not gonna lie. It's sloppy. So
I get it. You know, you all would probably think that I really enjoy plates on the wall. I don't. This is my wife. So I mean, but I mean, one of the things that I learned a long time ago: there's some battles you don't fight. You might win the battle, but you lose the war, and that's not okay. So anyway, this is a battle I lost. So. So anyway, all right. Anything else?
Great job, sir. Enjoyed listening to you.
Phil, it's such a pleasure to see you. It's such a pleasure. I mean, I have admired what you've posted for a long time. I think you are absolutely 100% spot on, and it has been. I'm so glad that you're here.
Before anyone heads out, we do have a survey we would like for you to complete. It shouldn't take you long. There's only about maybe 8 questions, quick and easy. And I'm posting it in the chat right now. Thank you so much, Kenny.
Not any problem. I'm only going to double my fee on this one. So.
Yeah, and don't forget your
agent.
agent.
For attending.
What'd you say?
Don't forget your agent.
Gallo, are you my agent?
Why not?
So since there are no more questions, I'll go ahead and stop the recording.